Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back. This week we're looking at Walking Dead, upcoming season 7. Getting pretty excited. I mean, the amount of time that we've all sunk into Walking Dead, good or bad as it's been, we gotta see it through. So this week I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at the first 6 seasons of Walking Dead and build up my power rankings before the next season starts. If you've seen my Game of Thrones power rankings, which you can right here, then you'll know how this thing goes. But if you haven't, then you're about to find out. Let's go ahead and start with some honorable mentions. Last on, I guess you could say, the honorable mentions is Simon. Only been in, I think, the one episode at the very end, season 6 finale. But something just struck me about this guy. He's all in on the role, and he seems like he could be a great villain. And in the scenes he was in, he almost was playing with Rick. So to have a guy who can go toe-to-toe with Rick as your secondary or even third top villain of the season, I think Simon will be greatly used in the season to come. But who knows, it is Walking Dead. Anyways, next up on the list is Rosita. I don't really care that much about Rosita, I'm not gonna lie. She's been around for a couple seasons. She's kind of been with Abraham, and that's all we've really seen of her. She's had some badass moments, sure, but I mean that goes with the territory of the show. She's not really that investable, and that's not a word either for me. Next up on the list is Sasha. Sasha has been sad for 70% of her time on the show. I can't really get that much invested in her either. They just keep hitting her with these tragedies, so she's just super sad and super stoic and doesn't really give you much to work with, or isn't that much fun, I guess, to watch on screen. But that's the thing with these power rankings for The Walking Dead. It's just not as good a crop as something like Game of Thrones, where top to bottom, that is a great list of characters I like to watch on screen. But Walking Dead, I'm realizing there's only like 5 or 6 of them left that I really enjoy. And as soon as they killed Shane, who was probably the best and still could be the best on the show, they lost a lot of muscle for this show. But anyways, let's keep on going to the honorable mentions. Next up, we have Aaron, one of the people we meet at Alexandria. He has a family there. He wants to help them. He's the one who was a part of bringing them into Alexandria. He has a pretty good rapport with most of the group. And, he's just a guy. He's a sort of normal-ish guy, and he's stayed that way somehow. Next up on the list, right before the official top 10 and last on the honorable mentions, is Jesus. Now, a big part of this is the comics. I am a comic reader, and he is just one of the best characters in the comics, so I'm kind of seeing that for his future. But what we've had with him, he's proven himself to be one of the best apocalypse survivors that we've seen. And he doesn't even really need guns. It's crazy. But yeah, lots of good stuff to come, especially if they follow along with what the comics have done. So that finishes it up for our honorable mentions. This is the start of our top 10 for basically the whole run of the show up to now. And number 10 is Negan, who's been in 10 minutes of the entire show. That's the thing. Another thing I'm kind of expecting for the future is Negan. I think he has the ability to be the best villain on the show by far. I mean, we haven't had a good villain since Shane. You can say what you want about the governor, but come on. That guy's plans were ridiculous, dumb, flashbacks, awful. No thank you. And Andrea might be the next biggest villain, but that's just because she was a terrible character and awful to watch on screen. Anyways, Negan. Negan made a pretty big impact in his first go-round, his first scene in the show. If it plays out like it did in the comics, that's still a fantastic scene. It does bother me incredibly that they cut it off right there just for some cheap marketing ploy to bring people in for the next season and drag it out. And no matter what, expectations probably won't be met by a lot of people. And next up on our list, after the illustrious Negan, is Abraham at number 9. Abraham has been pretty fun to watch. He's one of those characters who's a bruiser. He's a great zombie killer. They don't really expand on him beyond that. But in the most recent season, he's actually had some lighter moments, especially the last episode, which kind of point toward him being the one who's getting clobbered, especially since the person who got clobbered got back up and looked at the camera. And Abraham's definitely probably the toughest of the group. He came in a great way in his storyline, trying to find a cure, trying to save the world, and then to twist that on him and say it's not true, broke his whole world. And he's pretty consistently been a great guy, at least on the show. He saved those people in Alexandria when they were building the wall, and I guess we'll just see if he goes on from here, but he was pretty decent. I'll give him that. I didn't hate watching him on screen, which I can't say about our number 8 all the time. Coral! Now, Coral is probably one of the worst characters on the show. The first 2-3 seasons, maybe, along with Lori, who is almost unbearable. There was some moments in there for him. Him getting shot through the deer was pretty crazy. Him having to kill his own mother. Him getting shot in the eye again. Wow, it was just a crazy scene. And you can kind of see the makings of this arc of this child starting in season 1, and then by the time the show ends, whatever it is, season 20, 23, it's going to go on like Survivor or some shit. But once it actually gets there, Coral will be the new Rick, and it'll be a crazy arc. And he's done better in the last couple recent seasons. I still don't entirely enjoy him, but that's what you got to do when you're making a Walking Dead power ranking list. So next up on the list, number 7, Carol. Not to be confused with Coral. Carol is another one of those people who has a great arc from beginning to end. She started season 1 as a battered housewife who wasn't ready to cope with the world, and by season 2, 3, 4, she was fending for herself, making the craziest decisions, burning bodies for the group, killing children for the group. She made the full heel turn. She was just straight up like threatening and like making that kid's head crazy when she was talking to him in Alexandria about the terrors in the night and ripping you apart. That probably caused him and his mother to die. She made the full heel turn to like too crazy psycho grandma level stuff, but it was interesting at least. And then season 6 came around and they just decided to flip that pancake right back over. I mean, she was immediately just a wimpy, like, I can't do anything, I'm putting people in jeopardy. Oh, but why am I putting people in jeopardy? But hopefully they can get Carol back on track, or at least rein in her story and make it interesting. Because where she is now, there's still a chance that they can make it interesting, but the execution on The Walking Dead a lot of times isn't as good as the ideas that they're trying to get across.
I don't know what the hell's going on in the most wonderful way.
But we'll just have to see in the coming season. She probably isn't getting smashed in the head by Negan, so we're good there. And right above her is Morgan. Morgan isn't even in the show nearly as much as a lot of these other people, but he's still, especially before he came back to the group in season 6, one of the best characters. His part in the pilot was one of the best parts of the pilot. One of the questions I had for the next 2-3 seasons, where was he, and his storyline with his wife being a zombie, and then he comes back and his kid was turned, and that just put him over the edge. When we saw him halfway through The Walking Dead, he was bared up in that town and he was losing his mind. He went from that to that, and then he came back in season 6 and he's completely different again. Now he's this pacifist, like, I don't even know, half Jedi guy who's running around with the stick. He's like, you shall not kill. And it was interesting at least to present that moral dilemma to them. I don't think they handled it well, once again, especially with Carol. She's not the character you should have done that with. It should have been Rick probably, or someone else, but Carol could have combated it and maybe taken it down a different way, but to just have her completely on Morgan's side immediately, I just don't think was handled that well. It'll be interesting to see what they're going to do, though. I think they still have some hope there. And Morgan, I think, can be very interesting, especially now that he did break his rule of no killing and he shot that person to save Carol. That is going to be a good conversation. We'll see in the next coming weeks, hopefully. And starting off our top 5 is Michonne. Michonne is another classic Abraham type who's basically just a badass. Super cool design, super cool, like with the zombies following her on the chains, her entrance saving Andrea when she was all hooded. Awesome, but that execution with a lot of the acting and a lot of the material she was just given, which is barely anything, has kind of fallen short for Michonne. Especially when they just sprung that romantic thing with Rick. That came out of nowhere. Like, I got a lot of the mothership with Carl, but the execution of jumping right to that and that quickly in that way just didn't really satisfy people as the way I thought that they would have liked to. But she's still one of the strongest characters on the show, and definitely someone I want them to take on every supply run, because I can trust her to keep the people around her safe for the most part. At number 4 is Maggie, first found on the farm, opening Glen's eyes to the world of baseball and all the plates, and eventually losing every single person in her family. All she has left is Glen and the baby to be. Hopefully they can make it out of that circle. Spoiler for the comics, Glen did not make it out of that Negan circle last time. So, I mean, hopefully they both can. Their love story's probably the best on the entire show. Anytime they're split apart and looking for each other, that's usually one of the storylines I'm most invested in. And if nothing else, when they find each other, it's always just an incredible moment. And to see them building a family and sticking together and not being a Lori immediately puts them ahead of that relationship. Maggie's had a lot of great moments, and she hasn't done that many stupid things that have gotten other people killed. And that's pretty much the criteria a lot of the time in the zombie apocalypse. And right above her is her partner, Glen. Glen has been with us since basically the end of the first pilot. You can't say that for many people. Basically just him and Rick and a couple others. And Glen has been awesome since then. He was one of the best characters in season 1 and 2, and then he got this relationship with Maggie and could build it into 3, and then the one thing though is with Glen is that he keeps kind of like getting kidnapped and getting murdered, and like not getting murdered and escaping and being beat up, and he's kind of taken that role a lot of the times in the second half of Walking Dead. But just his relationship with Maggie alone has really kept his character afloat, I'll say. And right above Glen is Daryl, number 2 though. Daryl is number 2, and the main shortcoming of him is the other character work. Look, I get the badassery. I get that, and it's some great stuff. But again, that's a lot. It comes with the territory with Walking Dead. You got to bring a little bit more. And he's had some great storylines with his brother losing him and then finding him again and then having to kill him with the zombie. But he hasn't done anything the last couple seasons outside of, the supply runs and the beating up and the shooting people and the hunting. And I'm still looking for that romantic relationship for him. It doesn't even have to be romantic, but some kind of relationship. Definitely his relationship with Carol has kept a lot of him afloat. That's one of the best relationships on the show, but he should be out there looking for her. He should be talking with her about this whole thing with Morgan. They should all be there, but he's just off sidetracked with some of the other people, with Rosita and Denise, for no reason, just gets killed. I don't know. He's got to get back to his roots, which is Carol, not Coral. And at number 1, I mean, he kind of can't avoid it, Rick Grimes. First of all, he is the most developed character on the show. I couldn't ignore that. Everyone else has their shortcomings, but Rick, since he is the main character and the unkillable, the Jon Snow type, is that top character. And there isn't really a Tyrion in the show to upstage him at all, or a Daenerys even. But anyways, Rick's been with us since the very beginning. He's one of the most interesting storylines too. To see him go from a cop, this just guy, and just falling apart in the apocalypse and losing his mind every time his beard gets too long, and then he has to kill his best friend, and then his wife dies, and then he's seeing her ghost and talking to her on the phone, and every single person he ends up kind of liking usually dies, and all these crazy people are trying to kill him in his group, and he's just probably the most interesting storyline to follow right now, and he has his hands in every plot pie in the show. So that wraps up our top 10 for the first 6 seasons of Walking Dead, and we're going to be able to change this in the coming Sunday when season 7 kicks off, and we can finally get past this whole stupid Negan scene that they butchered by chopping it in half. But this is the season of Negan, and Negan was one of the best, if not the best, in the comics. I think he can be fantastic in the show, so I'm excited to see what he's got. Till then, you guys can check out these other videos here. Got some music, TV, and movie stuff coming in the future, and we'll just have to check back in then. See you next time for Walking Dead Power Rankings for Season 7, Episode 1. Till then, bye.